Today, VDM has awakened our senses about the intriguing and complex history of modern-day protests against bad governance in Nigeria. We often praise veteran human rights defenders who expose government corruption, but today he unmasked the strategy behind the scenes to examine how activism can sometimes be transformed into a sustainable business scheme. In this video overview, we will review how he traced the origins of key citizen movements from 2015 onward. We'll start with Occupy NASS, a 2016 protest sparked when lawmakers controversially purchased 108 luxury Toyota Prado vehicles for 3.6 billion naira, while the country was facing severe economic hardship. We will see how public frustration multiplied over sudden fuel price hikes, leading to the formation of massive, energized crowds across the nation, and the dramatic turning point in 2017, when music icon Two-Face Idibia announced a massive protest, only to back out just 24 hours prior due to alleged threats and fears of the movement being hijacked. Finally, we will examine how other prominent figures, with their Our Mumu Dondo movement, stepped in to take advantage of these leaderless, agitated crowds. Was this era of protest truly an unselfish fight for the people, or was it a calculated political business? Let's dive into the history and unmask the truth.
In early 2015, Nigeria was buzzing with a singular expectation. Muhammadu Buhari had campaigned on a strict anti-corruption platform, backed by major media figures, and the public believed his presidency would mark a sharp break from government waste. That optimism faced its first major test toward the end of the year. In the middle of national economic hardship, reports emerged that the Senate had approved 3.6 billion naira to purchase 108 luxury Toyota Prado SUVs for lawmakers. The frustration from the SUV scandal was soon compounded by a massive spike in energy costs. In early 2016, fuel prices jumped from 87 naira to 145 naira per liter, a nearly 70% increase that hit every household in the country. The response was a series of demonstrations that moved beyond the typical political rallies. Activists marched on the Capitol to demand transparency and the return of the luxury vehicles, a movement that became known as Occupy NASS. The Nigerian Labor Congress followed, pouring thousands of workers into the streets to reject the fuel hike. These weren't just isolated pockets of anger. The protests were becoming coordinated and massive. By mid-2016, a new reality had emerged. Millions of citizens were now battle-tested and unified by a shared sense of betrayal. They were a highly energized crowd, but they were essentially standing around an empty podium, waiting for someone to step up and lead. That leadership initially appeared in the form of a music icon. In early 2017, Two-Face Idibia used his status as a global superstar to announce One Voice Nigeria, a protest aimed directly at government failure. He spent weeks converting his online following into a physical force. His social media reach gave the movement publicity traditional activists couldn't match, with a major nationwide rollout planned for February 6th. But mobilizing the streets comes with risks that don't exist online. As the debate approached, reports surfaced of severe police intimidation and direct threats made against his family members to force him to stand down. Just 24 hours before the march, Two-Face released a video announcing he would no longer participate. He cited concerns that the event would be hijacked, effectively leaving the youth he had mobilized without a figurehead. He had successfully gathered the customers, a massive audience of ready-to-act citizens, through digital celebrity. But when the physical stakes became too high, he stepped away, leaving the crowd he created standing in a leadership vacuum. The crowd didn't disperse. It looked for a different kind of leader. Charlie Boy, known as the area fada, moved in immediately to pick up where the pop star left off. He began merging disparate groups, those from the earlier NLC strikes and the Two-Face supporters, into a single, more resilient entity he called Our Mumu Dondo. He chose his moments carefully. Using the June 12th public holiday as a catalyst, he scaled the local protests into a nationwide movement. With the president out of the country on extended medical leave, Charlie Boy used the vacuum to maintain a constant physical presence on the streets. This phase of the movement wasn't about celebrity, it was about physical endurance. Charlie Boy and his followers intentionally put themselves in the path of the state's security apparatus. Security forces met them with tear gas and dogs at the Unity Fountain. Later, at Woos Market, The group was attacked by pro-government thugs. Charlie Boy personally faced the blows, proving that his movement had a higher tolerance for physical risk than the celebrities who came before him. He had done the dangerous work of forging a hardened protest machine. But Charlie Boy didn't have presidential ambitions. He had built a vehicle with massive momentum, but he wasn't interested in driving it into an election. By 2018, the political calendar was turning toward the 2019 elections. The protesters who had survived 2 years of street battles were now a cohesive, motivated, and highly valuable bloc of potential voters. Omoyele Sowore had been watching this progression closely. As a media publisher, his platform documented every clash and every arrest, building a long-term bridge of trust with the people on the front lines. As the official campaign season began, he stepped out from behind the camera and launched the Take It Back movement, announcing his own bid for the presidency. The transition was efficient. The crowd that Charlie Boy had kept alive through physical sacrifice now had a leader who promised to take their street energy and turn it into government power. Sowore didn't need to build a base. He simply offered a political destination to a crowd that was already assembled. The cycle was complete. What began as a spontaneous demand for better governance had been refined and directed until it was finally harvested as personal political capital for a presidential campaign. The events between 2016 and 2018 reveal a recurring pattern in modern Nigerian activism. It shows how the raw energy of the public is moved through a series of hands, each serving a specific role in a larger operation. Think of it as a progression that starts far away from the streets. It begins with the initial spark of attention, where a high-profile figure uses their platform to gather a massive, unorganized audience. At this first stage, the goal is simple awareness. The celebrity brings the public's eye to the issue, creating a massive digital footprint. But they rarely stay long enough to face the physical consequences of the movement they started. In the second stage, the street-level leaders take over. Their job is to manage the product, the human crowd. They provide the physical defense and the tactical organization needed to keep people in the streets even when the tear gas starts flying. Finally, the operation reaches its conclusion. A political figure steps in to collect the finished result. They take the people who have been gathered by influencers and hardened by street leaders, and they convert that collective energy into campaign influence and political funding. When you see millions take to the streets, it's worth asking, are you looking at a spontaneous revolution, or are you just watching the final stage of someone's private political business?